Hi friends, today we are going to sew our block number 6 of our Pieceful basket sew along from our sew sampler box that came in, what month is this? In September. So this is what our block is going to look like today. We are going to be sewing block number 6 of our Pieceful basket sew along. If you're sewing the kit, this is what your block will look like. But I'm sewing it in the kit and I'm also sewing it in like a more of a yellow grayish and blue color. It'll give you an idea to kind of step out of your comfort zone a little bit. So that's why I'm doing it in 2 different colorways. With that being said, let's jump in and start sewing block number 6. All right, and here we go. I have all my pieces here to sew block number 6, okay? So we have all our pieces out. There are not a lot of surprises with some of the component on this block because we are on block number 6. So some of it are repetitive with the exception of the middle part. So the middle part is what we are going to do first. We're going to do our kind of like an hourglass square first, and I'm going to sew that. I have a different way of doing mine. Fat Quarter Shop has a great illustration on the pattern, but the way I'm going to sew mine is going to be different. It's going to be different because you're not going to need to cut so many different fabrics that will cause your fabric to stretch, and that's the only reason why I'm doing it this way, because it shortens the time and it helps me with more accuracy. Now, if you are a beginner sewer, the way Fat Quarter Shop have it written, it's super beginner friendly. You can do it that way. You can use that step-by-step tutorial and instruction in the pattern. But let me show you my way and you can pick and choose which way you want to go, okay? Now let's get started. So for this first part, we're going to make an hourglass and we're going to take our 2 squares. And so right here, I have 2 squares. Instead of having 4 different pieces, I'm going to put right sides together and I'm going to sew down the line, kind of like we're making a half square triangle. So I'm going to sew. I am trying this overhead camera because I feel like it helps you see better of what I'm doing. So you got to comment down below and let me know if it works out. Here we are. I've sewn 1/4 inch away from the center. I'm now going to cut. Doesn't matter how we cut, just don't cut through your stitch. That's the way I'm looking at it. It is not that serious to have to measure. I don't do that. This is what you're going to have. You're not going to trim either one of this. Okay, so let me just press it really quick. So now that I have these 2 sewn right here, this is just using the 2 square to make the 2 HST, to make the 2 half square triangle. I'm going to flip this, meaning that this is going to be here and this is going to be here, and I'm going to put it next to each other, making sure that my seam are smack down on each other so that way I don't have a weird hourglass. See how that is right there? Like that. I'm going to pin it in place. Get my pin right here. I'm going to pin it like that. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to pin again. So that way it doesn't move while I'm sewing. Doesn't really matter how you pin or where you pin. So what I'm going to do now is sew again on, I'm going to sew 1/4 inch away from the center. So that way I will have my sewing allowance when I'm done. So this is what I'm doing now. So now that they're both sewn, what I'm gonna do now is cut down the middle. Doesn't matter how, just cut because we're still gonna trim. So I'm just gonna cut with the scissors. And when you are done, you're going to have an hourglass that looks just like this. Okay. I'm gonna use this ruler to trim down to the size that I need. So I'm gonna put it right down the center and I'm gonna trim. That other rotary blade was not working. So I had to switch to another one that has a newer blade. So this one has a newer blade, can cut better. So what I'm gonna do now is put it on here. I'm going to put it my seam line. I'm gonna cut like that. Much better. So now that that is done, it's gonna give us what we need. It's gonna give us a perfect hourglass square like we need, just by cutting 2 separate fabrics. So there we go. Fat Quarter Shop did a great job with the illustration. If you are a little bit experienced, you can do it this way, but if you are a beginner, do follow this step by step because it's very beginner friendly. But for some of you who are looking for a shortcut, this is the way I do mine almost 100% of the time. And my fabric does not stretch when I do it that way. So that's done. I'm going to put it over here. So our next step right now is to to do our HST, and I'm going to do that taking our 2 pieces. So we're going to take our 2 squares right here. We're going to make another HST. So that's what I'm going to do now. So now I have my 2 HST completed. I'm going to put it right there to the side. The next thing we're doing is, I believe it's a little bit more challenging, but I'm going to show you step by step on how to do that. We're going to make what we call kind of like a fan kind of square looking thing. I don't know what it's called, but the first preliminary thing we're going to do for this section is have 2 HST, and I have the 2 HST right here. The next thing we're going to do is take our square pieces, okay? So I'm gonna put the 2 HST right there. We're gonna take these 2 square pieces, one, the dark background, and then the lighter background. We are going to cut it diagonal, like that. So we have that, and then we're gonna cut this other background diagonally from corner to corner. So that gives us 4 pieces right here, but we're not gonna need all 4. So when you put your pieces on, this is what they're going to look like. You're going to line it up just like this, with your dark piece going this way and your light piece going this way. If you're using the kit, your dark blue is going to be just like this, and then this is going to be a lighter background. And so what I'm going to do now is sew it. So I'm pressing away. I'm pressing to the right, and then I'm going to bring this back, and then I'm going to sew just like this. Okay, and I'm going to sew, but it's just going to be like that. When it's all sewn, this is what your piece will be looking like, right? After you've completed sewing this, you're going to take your background, and then you're going to also cut it in diagonal like that. So I'm going to put my ruler on here. Doesn't matter what ruler, just kind of like anything straight. I'm going to put it like this, and I'm going to cut like that. This will give us 2 pieces, but I'm only going to use 1. Now we have that right there, and then I'm going to leave it here like this, and I'm going to bring this guy, you see that? I'm going to bring it like that, and then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to sew it. In doing so, I'm going to flip this over to make sure I'm not sewing over my seam. I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch away from my seam line. So now I'm going to sew, and I'm just going to cut this little dog ears off here, so it doesn't create bulk. Cut my thread. So before I press, right, I'm going to take my ruler, and I'm going to trim it down to the size that it's supposed to be. This is it all done. I try to sew as close to this point as possible, but there's no perfection here. So by the time you wash this, it won't even look like it's not close to the center. I'm just going to show you right there what it looks like. This is what yours is supposed to look like. So even though this point right here didn't really super like come close, I was so afraid of sewing over and cutting off my points that I missed it by like 1/8. You know what? It's done. So our next step is to put our squares together. Before I do that, we know that we are going to be sewing our strips. So what I'm going to do is take our strip and sew it ahead of time. That way things a little bit faster. So I know that I need to get my little pieces, and I need to sew it like this. So I'm gonna sew my tiny square to my rectangle piece. I'm gonna chain piece it. So the next thing we're going to do is take that teeny tiny HST that we always do on the side of the basket, and I've already completed it ahead of time. So what I'm gonna do now is take our strip. We're going to take our HST with the light color facing up this way, and we're going to sew. And then we're going to take our other strip, which is our piece C, and then we're going to take our HST and sew it on to the bottom like that, okay, because it's going to be facing this way. So we're going to piece it with our light color going up this way. So I did chain piece it, and it's done. So we know we need to make this piece, even though it's 2 steps ahead. This is what it's going to look like when you're done. If you are sewing along by now, you already know how this is going to go. I'm not going to iron it, because if I iron it or press it, these letters right here are going to go away, and I need to know where to put them in the block. There's no way you can mess it up anyway. Even if I do press it, one is longer than the other. So there you go. So that's done. I'm going to put it right there. The next thing we're going to do, we know we're going to take our large square, and we're going to take our background, and we're going to sew it. We're going to sew it to the corner right here, and then the large square is sewn to the smaller square, we're gonna take our background, our white background, and I'm gonna put it like this. I'm gonna put this on top. We know that we need to cut this two diagonally, the same size. Once this is sewn, it has to be the same size for the other ones. What I'm gonna do is put them on top of each other. Oh, I'm going to cut diagonally like this. Take my ruler and cut. We know this is gonna be done. I've already had them done ahead of time. So what I'm gonna do is put them right there aside, all right? Now that we know the preliminary part are completed, we are going to assemble the block, okay? So I'm going to take my background, which is right here, and I'm going to take the hourglass that we completed earlier. I'm going to put it like this, all right? And I'm going to take this, line them up, put this like this. So now this is lined up, and this is how it's supposed to be. What I'm gonna do now is just chain piece it, and then we will continue on assembling our block. Oh my goodness, the jack came out to play today. Okay, so now my center is finally sewed on, and it's sewed on the right way. So the next thing we're doing is taking our side pieces, which is the strip, and we're going to sew it on like this. Okay, so let's do that. This is the part you can't really mess up. So now that we have our side pieces sewn on, I'm just gonna give it a little bit of heat, because the next thing we're doing is taking our other pieces and we're going to build onto this block right here. I've already sewn these pieces on ahead of time earlier in the video. So now what we're gonna do is make our life easier. It just connected, okay? So the next thing we're doing is taking our other two pieces. We're going to attach it to the upper and the left. So I'm going to take this, put it like that, and I'm going to bring this and put it like that. And then we're going to sew. Can't really mess it up because one is bigger than the other. So now my center is sewn on, and I've also trimmed it down to the size I need it to be. The next thing we're going to do is our pieces that we sewn earlier and trimmed, we're going to assemble the entire block, and then we're going to be done. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm just gonna assemble it, and I'm gonna sew it, and the entire block will be completed. So let's do that. Here's my block all sewn up and completed. This is what my block looks like when I chose my fabric. If you're sewing it using the kit, this is what your block is going to look like right here. And with that, block number 6 is done and in the book. So we are halfway done. Since we've sewn through the halfway mark of this sew along for the Pieceful basket, what I'm gonna do now is start sewing the finishing part. Since I am making 2 quilts, you're probably sewing 1 quilt using your fabric or using the kit. If you bought the kit, right, your finishing part comes in with the kit. The next thing I'm gonna do now is start sewing the finishing component that will go with the blocks. In other words, the sashing, the middle part, I'm gonna start cutting all that up and then sew it, so that way when I am done, I will be done completely and I won't be overwhelmed with trying to finish 2 quilts at the same time. That is all I have for you today. I hope you're having a great day, and I would love to see you in my next video. Bye.